You may think of the Blue Hills as natural and pristine, but human activity has totally transformed the park, for better or for worse. Today we'll look at how that transformation has happened in Quincy Quarries, a part of the Blue Hills that we are today. I'm Judy Jacobs, the Executive Director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, and I am really excited that we are now joined by Rick Kessley from UMass Boston. Hi, Rick.
Hello, Judy. Yes, this is Rick Kessley once again. What do I need to do?
I just need to do another intro. I just wanted to ask you to, if you've been to Quincy Quarries before, please leave a note in the comments, either a yes or a no. And you are watching Blue Hills Alive, sponsored by Tom O'Neill of Success Realty in Milton. And if you'd like to explore different places like Quincy Quarries, you'll want to download a free chart to 19 of the best hikes in the Blue Hills that list the distances and difficulties of each trail. So you'll find the trail that's right for you. So we can get going. So Rick, do you want to start out by talking about maybe how this landscape would have looked like 200 years ago?
Yes, I can do that.
Oh, great.
You can tell we're a little bit amateur here, but we're getting this done. So we are in the Quincy Quarries, and you may know that this, or you should know, that this area has gone through amazing transformations over the last 200 years. This originally was probably a somewhat pristine rock outcropping with the appropriate flora and fauna here, talking about 200 years ago, back in the 1820s. And then it was decided that this was a perfect place to get granite in about 1826 or so, 30, and it became very famous as a granite center. You all know probably that the granite here was used to make the Bunker Hill Monument, among other sorts of things. There was a railroad set up. That brought the granite to the Neponset River. There's actually a granite marker at the bike path in the Granite Ave point, which commemorates this first, I think it might be the first commercial railroad in the United States. So this became a mine, a granite mine. And so people began digging down, grabbing this granite, and that was a very active mine for maybe 150 or so years. And then at that point, probably about the 1940s through the 1960s, the various quarries in this area were abandoned, and water started filling into these huge pits that were extremely deep and created in the 1940s to 60s to the 80s giant, very deep ponds, and we're in the middle of what might have been the largest of those ponds right here. I think about 1999, the state decided that they should fill it in. It was a hazard, and I think they also needed a place to put all the soil and dirt from the big dig, and so that was used to fill this place in. So it went from a 300-foot deep pit to this meadow that we see right now. So major transformations from natural habitat, probably woodlots. It was logged, to this deep quarry, to deep pools, to filled in meadows, and that's basically where we are now. And it's interesting, we can look around and see what the habitat has changed, see what's here after these 200 years of drastic changes in the area. So right here we're in the field. Most of the field here is pretty non-native. These things here, this is bird tree foil. It's a legume. It fixes nitrogen, has very typical legume flowers. Right behind it, here is orchard grass, and maybe over here this is another sort of common grass that we see called timothy. I'm not sure why, but anyways, that's also a common grass that's in here. There's a bunch of other plants in here. I see vetches, I see plantains. This is a flowering plant. We've seen this before. We've seen this before. Drop that one. It's a flowering plant. You can see the cool anthers there that are coming out. So it produces quite a bit of wind-pollinated pollen, and that's the leaves here. Again, this is one of the plantains. You have a different species of this in your yard, most likely, more ovate leaves. But again, one of the many species. I see clovers in here as well, also nitrogen fixing. So these things, most of these things in here are non-native. Various grasses. I see a rose right over here as well, and then there's a number of other species that are in here. So we're going to walk from here into the sort of more forested areas. I can see over here there's a lot of grape coming up this tree, so that's natives. And we'll walk in here. It'll be a little dark for a second, but I think the camera should adjust. And then we will be able to see some other plants that are in this spot as we walk towards some of the remnant ponds that are here, very shallow ponds that are in this area now. So a little further, come this way. Now we're almost where we're going to stop, right here. Now it's cooler, so you probably were hot out there in the sun, but you're cool now. And there's a bunch of different things in here that are sort of fun to look at. So right here, this is sweet gale, and if you can smell, you'll smell basically it smells like bay leaves, and it's in that same family. Myrica is the genus, and this is native, and it's here. And it tends to be in these kinds of sort of shady, wet areas. And then we got things like, that's a black oak, that's obviously native. Here's a birch, there's another native thing. And then interestingly, on this side, we have a bunch of other stuff. This is a hawthorn. I think I read there's like 1,000 species of hawthorns. So I have no idea what it is, but it interestingly makes sort of funny looking leaves, different kinds of shaped leaves. It's related to apples, things like that, crab apples. So that's here. And then there's, that's actually a blueberry, bush blueberry. And then this weird thing, there's, although that's not, that's a sumac. I thought that was, I made a mistake before, but that's a sumac. There's also in here, I was looking earlier, and over the other side there are these giant tree of heavens, which is a non-native thing. And as we walk in here, you can see the fruits on the Myrica, the gale, and they're very waxy, and you can use it to make candles and all sorts of things like that bay. And we're going to continue walking this way carefully, so the camera doesn't fall down with the person holding it. And we can start to see, we'll look out into this pond, and we'll start to see some interesting things. So we'll come to this spot right here, look out into the very, very shallow pond that we have here now. And there's a number of different things that are in this area that are sort of interesting to look at. The main grass here, which you can see the tops of, and this is Phragmites. This is non-native. It's very invasive. You see it everywhere on wetlands, along lots and lots of different rivers. And so it's walking its way into this new sort of pond here. Here's another non-native. This is a glossy buckthorn, and it's also non-native, and there's fruits there, and it's very invasive, so you can see it's very common right in this spot. And then out into the water, you can actually see some little green stalks coming up and little tufts on the end, and that's a Eliocharis. It's a genus that's in the sedge family, and I saw something move in there. So there is fauna in here. We've seen a couple of fish, although I don't know if they're native, and there's also very large dragonflies flying around, which I love because they eat other things that I don't like. So we can walk a little further this way, continue, and we'll see some other interesting things. That's the tree of heaven, but there's some birches in here. Oh, here we go. So this is tree of heaven. but there's big, huge ones over there. These very, very long. That's a single leaf. So that thing is one leaf. These are leaflets. And there's a bud that's right here that makes this whole thing right there a leaf. And so that's very common in here, and there's lots of them. And it's definitely non-native. Shouldn't be here, but it's here just the same. And if we walk this way, there's red maple, so that's a nice thing. That belongs here. That's native. I see a birch over here. It's a gray birch, also native. So very mixture of things in this area. And I'm going to walk us over to this spot because it's a cute little native place, location, and there's several interesting things to look at. More glass. Oh, look. There's a tomato. What is? Shoot. Tomato family, which is the Solanaceae, and it's, what's the common name? I'll remember it in a minute.
I will
come back
too.
to that. Over here. So this is what I was really excited to show you. So here's a little patch of native things, and here is cattails. And what's really nice about cattails, it's in perfect flower right now. You maybe don't think about cattails as being flowering, but they are. And the flowers are not very descript, and that's because they're wind pollinated. They're not trying to attract insects to come to them. And the interesting part about it, you can see here, there's two parts to it. This part up here is the male flowers, and I'm going to show you here. I'm going to tap it on my hand, and you can see how much pollen it's producing. So that's the male flower right there. And then underneath it down here are the female flowers, so it's monoecious, separate male and female flowers on the same plant. And here's the female flowers down here, and they have little stigma surface sticking out that catches the pollen. You can't see that very well. These are edible. People supposedly you can cook it like the female flower part. You can cook like just lightly boil or something or other and eat it like tiny corn cobs. And the pollen people have used in the past to add to flour, add lots of protein. So that's really beautiful to see that in a nice flower right at the moment. And then over here, this part's going to turn brown. That's the typical cattail. In fact, you can see some. You probably should stay right where you are, Judy. But there's one that's a little older, and you can see now this is turning into the fruits. The male part is all withered away and gone. And then right behind that is another native that likes to get its feet in the water. This is an alder, and this is actually female flowers, but they look kind of like cones. And it is not a conifer, it's not a pine, but it does make flowers. I can bring a piece over. Should I bring a piece over to you, Judy?
Sure. We also want to thank Amy Gals. Amy. Thanks, Amy, for the thumbs up.
What? It's up? Are we done?
No. Amy just gave us a thumbs up. So
okay.
You're doing good.
So this is alder, and that's the female flowers right there. And they make little tiny cone-like structures. But it is not at all a conifer. It's not related to pines at all. And you can see the leaves are standard dicot, broad-leaved type things. So alder is also, which is this plant right here, and the red maple, which is behind it, those are very typical common plants that like to get into the water a little bit. So I'm not surprised to see them here along with the cattails. So this little patch right here is all natural and native things, but then we just came through a patch that had all sorts of non-native things, the Phragmites, the glossy buckthorn, and a number of other smaller things that are there. So it's sort of an interesting habitat, and nature has taken over now. I'm assuming that we're not going to do any more major changes here. So nature's going to, whatever plants happen to be here, whatever animals can get into the area are going to probably become established. Hopefully not too many of the invasive ones, and hopefully more of the native things like this. I look out here and I can see lots and lots of dragonflies, some birds, so it is becoming a pretty, useful and natural habitat in the area, even though it's still a mixture of two worlds, the human introduced world of invasive and non-natives, and then natural flora and fauna. So that's probably what I have to say about this area. If you would like to learn more, you can email me, call me up, check with the Friends of the Blue Hills, and I'm happy to, to find any other plants that might be in the area as much as I can. Anything else I should say, Judy?
We are going to talk a little bit about development and just
kind of put this development in perspective of are there current threats to the Blue Hills?
Good point, Judy. This has obviously been developed in a certain way as a mine, as a quarry, and now we've let it go. And you can see that it's not at all natural anymore. We've been sort of messing around in this particular spot for 200 years. Again, first logging the area, making the quarry, and then trying to bring it back to normal. But it really does change the dynamics of this. And what it ends up as, 50 years from now, it's been this state for maybe the last almost 20 years, 15 to 20 years is when they finish filling these in. What is going to be 50 years from now, I'm not really sure. And so the development does have an impact, and you're not going to get back some of the species and some of the flora and fauna that you originally might have wanted in this area. But we'll have to see what nature does with all of that. I don't know the answer yet. Does that help?
That does.
Would you like me to turn it towards you? Do you want to talk to a little bit about that?
Sure. I think we're wrapping up. But thanks so much, Rick, for the tour of Quincy Quarries, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. And you're watching Blue Hills Alive, and I really hope I don't fall. And,
I hope you don't fall too.
We're sad that Melissa isn't doing our. We're really sad that Melissa isn't doing our video anymore. But so we made it work today, and we'll figure out something else for another week. And we'll be back next Thursday at noon. And if you want to explore the Blue Hills, you'll want to download the guide. It's a chart of 19 best hikes in the Blue Hills at friendsofthebluehills.org/chart, and it is in the comments, so you can just click there as well. So thanks to Tom O'Neill of Success Real Estate in Milton for sponsoring these weekly videos, and let us know in the comments what you think. See you next Thursday at noon.